All right, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming, and great to talk to all of you. So just, again, a little bit of an introduction from me. I'm from New York, came down last night, but again, a little bit of a homecoming. I did 8 years at Georgetown, and I actually remember starting my third year rotations, and I was driving down here. There's like a mall down the road, and I remember I had to buy new clothes and everything, so kind of brings back memories. Um, I also did a surgical transitional year at Maimonides, that's in Brooklyn, and then I did my residency at North Shore LIJ, now actually called Northwell. They're basically taking over all of Long Island. I'm an ophthalmologist, mainly private practice. I actually do a little bit of city hospital work as well too. Work with some residents as well, so that's always really rewarding. And I've been with MedSchoolCoach for about 5 years now. So, how to stand out. A couple stats, and again, don't get intimidated by the numbers, but for the 2021 application cycle, about 53,000 applicants. That almost combined for about 1 million applications, and about 22,000 people gained acceptance. Bottom line, about 60% of applicants don't get into medical school. Don't let that worry you. I say that for a couple reasons. One, if you don't get in the first time, that's okay. You're in good standing. A lot of people have trouble. But two, it's just really important to stand out and make yourself known and give a good reason why you want to be a physician. So, I'm not sure if you guys might be familiar with this, but there's a bunch of different applications that you should be aware of. AMCAS, that's the big one. That's for allopathic medical schools. AACOMAS, that's for osteopathic schools. In Texas, they like to do things differently. I don't know if anyone's from Texas here, but they have their own application, the TMDSAS. And again, they're all pretty similar. There's a couple differences that we'll go into. The personal statement lengths for Texas are a little bit shorter, but they require a couple more essays. The activities for Texas, they only want, or they want it a little bit shorter. But again, once you do one application, usually there's a pretty good transition from one to the other. It's a complicated process. Again, we just kind of touched the surface of there's multiple applications. It's time consuming, definitely plan ahead, requires attention to detail, get all the help you can get. And this is really true. And a lot of students that we work with, I always emphasize, plan ahead, get your application in early. Specifically, AMCAS just opened up a couple days ago, meaning that you could submit and get your grades verified. This is important because it takes a while. They're going to take a look at your transcripts, and they have to actually make sure what you put into AMCAS matches what's in your transcripts. Obviously, they want to make sure the grades line up, but there's also course classifications, whether or not it's science or not science. It's tedious work. So if you get your application in right away, you'll be one of the first people to be verified. You wait a couple of weeks, you wait a month, now time's building up, more people get in, and now you're delaying your time to get secondaries, meaning people are already starting to interview while you're still filling out your application. So early submission is crucial. It really is an 18-month process because you have to get all your everything in order, make sure your letters are in, get your essays, and obviously we're going to talk about your activities, but make sure you have all your activities and everything as well. So we're going to go through obviously everything that is required. You don't need me to tell you that MCAT GPA is important. The stats, MCAT 512, and it keeps getting higher. GPA around a 3.75. Honestly, if you put me back in Georgetown, I'm probably not getting a 3.75 right now. So it's tough, but obviously you need a high GPA and you need to do the right coursework. Obviously, organic chemistry, general chemistry, biology. Some of it can be a little bit school specific. They want maybe like a sociology class, a genetics class, biochemistry. But good to just check if you have a dream school, make sure that you're not missing, if they really like a genetics class, make sure that you take that. Not a big deal if you miss it. You can always take that class while you're applying. But again, another reason to plan ahead. Activities, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but crucial part of your application. Personal statement. So personal statement, as I was saying before, 5,300 characters for AMCAS and AACOMAS. Texas, again, wants to be a little bit different, 5,000 for Texas. We don't need, you obviously know, original, well-written, but really the main thing, motivation to study medicine. This sounds intuitive, but it's actually, people will miss some points. You want it to have the science aspect, but you also want like the human aspect. There's a reason why you want to go into medicine. What is it about people that really grips you? Why do you want to do this as opposed to being, in the lab or doing something else? Conversely, I've had students write too much about, volunteering, volunteering's crucial, but you could be a social worker in a hospital and do great work. What is it about medicine? What is it about the science that you want to be a physician? So you really just kind of have to weave those two things in and make a convincing narrative. Take a look at the mirror. Again, I know this is an awkward exercise to do, but what makes me special? And again, be modest, but be honest, and think about really what will make you stand out. So activities, jobs, research, volunteer work. I always say it's good, again, getting ahead of ourselves, but to plan your activities, when you write them down in your application, while you're doing the personal statement, because you don't want it to overlap. And I've seen students make this mistake where they'll have their activities and their personal statement kind of line up, and you're not gleaning any new information from the personal statement. But what am I doing to my story? What is my hook? I think that's really important. My line that I always like is, what's your first line? Why is your first line going to make your reader want to read your second line? Think about something that you've read, or even a TV show. What's the hook to that TV show that's going to make you keep watching? Imagine yourself, or imagine you're in the shoes of an ADCOM. Why are they going to look at your personal statement and give it attention when they have 1,000 more to read? So don't be too flowery with your language. Get to the point, but I think it's really good to create a narrative. Introduce people that have really shaped you. Whether it be, a parent or someone who's gotten sick, someone you've worked with, a doctor that inspired you. Introduce us to that character and have that as someone that we want to know more about. Same thing, demonstrate your unique qualities through experiences. I think that's really important because I've seen students, again, they'll just start listing things like I did this and then I did this. And it's not necessarily wrong that they're doing that. But just imagine if you're reading that and you're reading that over and over again, you're not going to grip the person that you're trying to convince to bring you in for an interview. The personal statements that I love, again, they hit on just a couple points, but they're introducing us to a memorable patient that they helped, someone that I'm emotionally invested in for those 5 minutes that I'm reading that personal statement. And that's going to be the difference between if you have similar stats between someone else. If you have that interesting story, they'll want to bring you in and talk to you because, again, at the end of this, it's another human being who is going to invest 4 years in educating you. So really make that compelling story. Here's some excerpts. I won't read all of them, but again, you don't want flowery language, but you really just want to tie everything together at the end. And really explain your story to your reader. I'll read the middle one. I had just passed the final mile marker. My ankles hurt from the uneven trail, and my arms ached from my fall. This approach has translated outside of my races and into my life, where it has been exceptionally useful on my journey of becoming a physician. So this is something I'd want at the end of the personal statement when they're trying to just get everything all hooked together. They're tying in their experiences of what they did before, how it relates to medicine, and it's a really good just kind of argument at the end. Letters of recommendation. So number one, Are you guys familiar with the committee letter? Some schools might not have it, but several schools will have a pre-med committee where they'll gather your letters of recommendation, and then they'll evaluate you and put everything together and write kind of one formal letter, but also include your letters of recommendation. If your school offers this, definitely take it, because if you don't, it looks poorly upon you. It looks like you're trying to perhaps hide something, or why don't you want to go through the committee? If your school doesn't offer it, perfectly fine. We're not going to fault you for not having a school with a committee letter. But the main thing, two basic science professors, one humanities, and then some schools only want 3. Some schools will take up to 5. If they only take 3, do not force them more. They're telling you they just want 3. But if they take more, you can do your, for instance, someone you volunteered with, or your PI for research. That's always a very good one to have. This one, be careful. I always recommend students, because you can have selection bias in your favor. Go to a professor and say, do you feel comfortable writing me a strong letter of recommendation? If they hesitate at all, move on. And that's fine, because if you don't have a letter that's really glowing, it looks suspicious, because everyone has great letters. For the humanities, some people will do like a kind of like a class that is similar to science. I would say go for something different. Go for an English professor, sociology. Show your interest in another topic. But it's really crucial to get those 2 science. Think about it. Think about while you're taking your classes, and it's tough. Like if you enjoyed organic chemistry, it's a big lecture. So perhaps email the professor, try to get a relationship with him or her, even though it could be a little bit difficult. Even if you don't, reach out to them, be kind, say, I really like these specific aspects of your class. Here's my resume, here's my rough draft of a personal statement. I'm more than happy to meet with you over Zoom or whatever. Usually professors are happy to do that. Even they understand it's a big lecture class and you might not have the individual attention. But think about it, because I've seen students, you can submit your AMCAS without letters of recommendation, but schools will not look at you until you get all your letters in. So you'll list, I'm using these letters on AMCAS, and then the schools will wait for you. And if you don't have that, then it's just going to delay your application. So professors get busy, they can forget, so make sure to stay on them. I always recommend, if you're applying, if you're planning to submit in May, speak to the professors earlier in the year, February. Just reach out, give them the heads up, and that will really help you. Secondaries, everyone's favorite part. So secondaries, it's an interesting thing. So you do all your activities, you put everything into your primary, there's a little bit of a lull period, and then you get bombarded with secondary applications. These are tricky because students, when you're doing your primary, you're worried about putting everything into your application. Secondaries are going to ask very similar questions. So by the end of the process, you've repeated yourself and told your story a million times. What we recommend, because here's the tricky thing, you're going to get a rush of secondaries. One day you might get 8 to 10 secondaries, and they want them back within 2 to 3 weeks. Pre-write them to your advantage, and we have a list on our website. Pre-write them, because they don't really change year to year. The big exception, not even a big exception, but during COVID, they added, or after COVID, they started asking COVID questions, and that, for the most part, hasn't changed. But it's going to be the same questions. How do you bring diversity to our school? Give an example of resilience. What's your biggest weakness? What's your biggest strength? How have you shown leadership? The COVID question was, how has COVID changed your thoughts on medicine, or how has it impacted you? And then there'll be other things too, like why do you want to go to this school? I always recommend for our applicants, when they say why this school, give specific reasons. Don't say, let's see, strong academics, good clinical training. There's not a medical school that will say we have bad clinical training. Every school is going to say that they have excellent academics. But can you point to what research they're doing? I've done similar research. I'm excited to go into Dr. Smith's lab and join her project. Or volunteer experience. I really appreciate how they volunteer at this particular organization. I've done something similar. Now you're letting them know that you align properly with them, and more likely that they'll give you an interview. Activities. So back to activities. And this is for AMCAS. So maximum 15 activities, 3 designated at most meaningful. Basically what that means for AMCAS, you'll get a description, 700 characters, and then the 3 that you designate most meaningful, you'll still get that 700 character block, but you'll get another 1,300 characters, 1,325, to describe it a little bit more. What I recommend, and there's no set rule for this, you want to make sure that you for the 700 characters, you really describe what your roles were. I would say for research, explain what the research project was, even if you were doing a small part of it. You know, this was a Parkinson's lab. Don't go right into the weeds. For the most meaningful, give a narrative again. I always say for research, I think it's great when someone explains a failure. How did they, get an unexpected lab result and they were able to overcome it and become stronger from it? Volunteering, who did you help? Give an example of someone that really benefited from your help.
For the 3 designated most meaningful, is it usually better to have all 3 of them as medical related, or is it stronger to have at least one that maybe not?
Sure. So the question is, do all 3 of the most meaningful need to be medically related? Definitely not. For instance, if you were a college athlete, definitely put that as most meaningful. If you have a strong commitment to something, put that. Some people only put 1 medically related or 1 science related, and that's fine. I would just say make sure to have at least 1 that's science related. I think this is important too. Longitudinal. A lot of students will ask me, do I need to fill out all 15? And I think it actually sometimes looks poorly upon the student if they're struggling and they're breaking up activities to fill out all 15. But if you have something that you stuck with for 3 years, you were in a lab for 3 years, you volunteered at an orphanage for 3 years, something that really you showed commitment with, we're going to remember that. And it shows, again, 1, commitment, shows that you were working well with the people there, that you were able to form those relationships. Leadership role. And again, it's not like you need to be president of an organization, but how were you able to work well with people, give direction? Because as a student, as a future physician, you're going to have to be a leader, even in a small spot, telling people beneath you what to do, but in a good way. Original idea. Or did you do something international? This is all excellent. Some people work with aid organizations, created a nonprofit, served as a coordinator at a free clinic, or again, went abroad. All excellent things to highlight on your application. So people will also talk about the theme of your application. You don't be too sclerotic with that. I think it's good to do as many activities as you can that benefit you, but I think it is also good to present yourself as, again, I lived abroad and did international volunteer work, and then that's your theme of cultural appreciation, diverse experiences. Worked multiple jobs in college. Again, that's a great thing to say. Developed a theme of work ethic, maturity, responsibility. Applicant was a ballerina. Theme of dedication, perseverance, and apply these qualities to all activities. So again, you can use your main activity or a couple main activities and really create that theme of what you're bringing to your prospective medical school. Shadowing is important. Everyone needs to shadow, 1, for your application, but 2, also for your benefit. Doctors do many different things. My job is very different from someone who's in primary care versus anesthesia. See as many specialties as you can. It needs to be with an MD or a DO. Some people will start to do shadowing of physical therapy therapists. Try not to do that. I mean, if you want to, you can, but it's not going to be part of your application. But try to see as many specialties because, again, it's hard to know what you want to do without really observing what other doctors are doing. As we say here, primary care physicians, surgeons, cardiologists, also different settings is excellent because, again, even me as an ophthalmologist, what I do in the hospital, very different than what I do in the clinic. You're seeing different pathologies, different patients, and it's really worthwhile seeing those different experiences. This is also important because they're going to ask you, again, for your personal statement, why medicine and what patients have you seen? And that's a big problem I've seen with students who don't have that example of, I was working with this doctor and I saw this, as opposed to, I did really well in my science classes, and then that's it. Leadership, again, you don't have to be, again, president of an organization, but we want to see that you're able to, if you're rounding and you're now a senior resident, you have residents working underneath you, you have interns, you have medical students, you have nurses. Can you be an effective leader? Because if you're going to be a doctor, on some level, you will be leading people. But think about it, positions in employment, church, community, and your school. You're a TA. Did you take a position of onboarding new TAs? I was working with an applicant who was a medical assistant, great activity to get clinical experience. And then she was great with that activity, with her job there. And then she started training people coming in. So not only is that now activity where she's getting great medical experience, but she's also now getting some leadership too. So just think about what you're doing and think about how you can get that experience. So again, this is how you're really going to set yourself apart. What's your own life theme? Kind of what we were talking about before. What are some of those major activities that you've done that have really shaped you? And how can you then really present that to a medical school? What's impacted you the most? Again, this does not have to be geared directly towards medicine. A D1 athlete for 4 years. Again, that's leadership, commitment, and that's really defined someone. Weave them into your activities list and personal statement. And again, my helpful hint for this is do your 3 most meaningful activities, even just a draft, while you're doing your personal statement. Because I've worked with so many students that will do their personal statement, then talk about what they are going to do in their most meaningfuls in the personal statement, then have to go back to their personal statement and rewrite it to present new information. So always just be thinking about what you're doing for both. And again, it's really important to have just a great activity list. Again, when I say this, people always worry about filling out all 15, and you don't. But really just do what you're passionate about. I was talking to another advisor, and he was telling me about, he was really impressed with a student who took a year off to become, I think it was either a carpenter or construction worker, because he just wanted to do something different. And we both liked that. It was just getting some different real world experience, and it showed a lot of work ethic, and that was a great thing to do, and very different. And again, just make it very unique like you are. The interview. So you made it to the interview. Great accomplishment. If a school is interviewing you, they're taking time to get to know you. Take it as a compliment. They're investing a lot of time in you just by interviewing you. So you've made it this far. This is great. You're not there yet, though. And I've seen so many students who have a great application and they're personable, but they'll bomb the interview. So you have to be really careful here. So one, know your application. Couple pitfalls that I've noticed in students. One, they'll put their most meaningful, or research as their most meaningful. And there are different types of interview styles, but if it's a traditional open file, they're going to ask you about that. I've seen students just say, oh, the research was 2 years ago. I don't really remember it, or I don't know what happened with the project. That they're done. That just looks so terrible because it shows that you really didn't care about the research. We understand that you had to leave the lab, but show that interest in what you've done. You're putting this as a most meaningful, back it up. I had one student start her personal statement with Guernica. It was a famous Picasso anti-war painting. I asked her about it. She didn't know about it. Someone recommended that she start her personal statement with that. Not that that's, make or break, but it's still kind of a red flag because why are you putting in your personal statement and you can't talk about it? No common questions, again, challenge questions, biggest weakness, biggest strength. You also might get an MMI. Those are more where you're going to get different scenarios where they give you an ethical situation where you have to kind of present both sides and come up with a decision. Those, again, require a lot of practice. There are different scenarios that you can go over, know the core competencies that they're looking for. But also, too, I've seen students not talk enough or talk too much. And that's a big thing, too, because sometimes they're talking and they lose my interest. Know why medicine. I will always ask students why medicine, and sometimes they don't have a good answer, which is interesting that you've made it this far and you don't have that. So be prepared for all questions. Have questions for the interviewer. And really just, again, it's a conversation. It's okay to have fun with it and to enjoy your interview, but always be buttoned up. Always use formal language, even if they're asking you about your interests. For instance, if someone puts that they're a runner, I'm a runner, I'll ask them their times, what they've done. I'm doing that for 2 reasons. One, I'm genuinely interested. But if you're really a runner, you're going to know your times. You're going to know, how, what races you've done. And if they can't answer that, it's, again, a little suspicious for me. And also, if I'm asking that question, I still want them doing formal language. I don't want them to slouch or to just, again, become a little bit too relaxed. So just be careful. And again, lots of practice. It really does pay off to practice and work on it. And definitely get help. There's a lot of students who really went at it alone and didn't understand that they had some unique attributes. Again, student was a ballet dancer, requiring incredible discipline, teamwork, knowledge of nutrition. That's a great thing. Again, that's a great theme to bring into your application and make it stand out. Also, how many students or how many prospective students have been a ballet dancer? It's a unique thing. Again, reapplying to medical school. It's always amazing how, you need someone else sometimes just to look at your application and see what was missing. Could be something simple. Again, a big thing that I see with a lot of students is not enough clinical experience. They've done shadowing and they've done research and they might have done great on the MCAT, but they've never worked with a patient really. And that looks poorly upon them because, again, they can't pinpoint that, yes, I had a difficult moment with this patient, but I realized it was my calling. I was able to really appreciate the gravity of the situation. So you go back. It's easy to correct, but you have to become a medical assistant, become a scribe, become an EMT. But take a look at it with a really sober eye and see what you need. So again, we work with a lot of these applicants. Particular reapplicant repeatedly tested poorly on the MCAT. But again, it's frustrating because the MCAT's just one day, but an otherwise great application. But we argued superior academic record, great letters of rec, and a great list of activities and accomplishments outweighed that one day. And she was accepted to a great medical school. It does happen. We really try to just shape the application, but really shaping it just a way where we're letting you guys shine. And we love to help people. We have, I think we're now, I think, over 100 physicians. So plenty of us, but we're always here to help. Right now, I think we just open up for any questions you guys have.
Throughout my life, we've been taking care of our grandmother.
Mhm.
Would that count as an activity, taking care of a relative?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the question is, taking care of a relative, does that count as an activity? Absolutely. That's definitely an activity you can put. Again, they'll ask you contact and whatnot. Don't worry about contact. They understand that it's not something necessarily formal that you got, you know, through a job agency. But that definitely counts. I wouldn't necessarily say it was actual clinical experience, but I think that that's a really important thing to put down. It shows that you're a caring person, but you also know how to help people, and also it's a significant amount of your time. So you need to let your AdCom reviewer know that you're spending that time with that family member who needed your help. Definitely, yeah.
What would you suggest as we're going to connect to the physician and possibly get started?
Sure. So the question is how to connect to physicians for shadowing. I think the main thing is really just cold calling. I know for me, I've had some people shadow me, and it was a friend of a friend. It was an old colleague or old co-resident would reach out and said that someone needed to shadow. A little bit of a heads up is always good because we need to, like there's HIPAA privacy things that you just need to go through, which wouldn't be a problem. But we're usually happy if the students mature, which you guys are. We're happy to show what we do and to teach. It makes our days interesting, so we're happy to do it. So what I would recommend is just reach out to people. Even if it's 50 emails, you'll get someone who will say yes. But even better if you have a friend of a family who's a physician, because even if I couldn't have someone shadow me, I could reach out to 10 people and we'll find you someone, and we can then I could get you to different types of ophthalmologists so you can see all the eye surgery you want. So, yeah.
For those who have had a difficult semester in the beginning of their undergrad, how would you guys look at that towards like the end? Are you looking from low to like go rising as their like third or fourth year?
Absolutely. So the question is, if you had a tough first semester starting off in college and you improve, how does that look? Definitely helps. Improvement does help. But a couple things with that. One, I would say it's important, and this is where it's crucial for your application at some point to show why you had that difficult semester. And then not only to just explain it, but then to show how you've corrected I don't want to say problem, but corrected what happened. Because from our side of things, we're looking, well, you're going to have difficult moments in medical school. What's going to happen when you have a tough test or whatever? How can you then bounce back? So it can definitely be forgiven, and especially if you've done really well later on, but show that AdCom that you have the skill set and the tools to really overcome any issue that you'll have. Because again, understandable that you're coming from high school to college, you have a tough first semester, but it just gets more difficult. It's not like med school first semester will be easy. So, sure.
So if you have additional documentation to provide, like why that
Mhm.
happened, is there somewhere that I can do that in application to provide that?
What I would do for that is I would probably, not necessarily on AMCAS, but I would just send that perhaps directly to the schools. Yeah, but you can mention it on the application. Yeah.
For research for that
Mhm.
Like how much would be considered a submission? So I just graduated from my undergrad and I was doing research in my undergrad first semester. And then for my gap year, I'm planning mostly on clinical experience.
Mhm.
Would like a semester of research undergrad be sufficient? Should I be looking for more opportunities?
So the question is, how much research do you need? Tough question. For you, I would say I would try to get more research, just because you're competing with people who have been published a couple times. So I think it's good. Again, if you don't have clinical experience, I think that's important to focus on and get that. But it's schools like when you've done research, and it shows that you're most likely going to continue that in medical school. So try to do more. because again, look at the people who are next to you. They've done, 3 years of research and might have a paper. So you can make up for that in other ways, but that's something that you need to overcome either with more research or bringing a different aspect to your application. So.
How do you think
I suppose I wish students who have to do one gap during one.
Oh, that's fine. I think the question is if you've taken one gap year or more, how do the schools view that? That's fine. The main thing is, how are you using them? It's kind of the classic thing. You don't want big gaps in your resume for any job. Same thing for med school. You don't, if you're taking a gap year to hang out, that doesn't look good. But if you're taking a gap year to volunteer somewhere, or do more research, absolutely. Especially if it's helping with a weakness, for sure.
Just to clarify, for the publication section, if you've written like multiple articles for the same publication, you have to write all those under one heading, or do you have to do like a separate entry for each?
Say that one more time.
If you have written like multiple articles for a single like magazine,
Got it.
or newspaper or publication like that for journal, do you have to put them all in the same like entry for the activities, or do you have to put them as like separate entries, like first publication, second publication?
Got it. So the question is, if you've done multiple publications, but for the same journal, how do you list them? And what I would do is just for one section for publications, just list all of them out. Yeah.
Is there like a certain number of activities that should be like listed out of the 15?
There's no magic number. And I've worked with students who maybe had 8 or 9. And, the question is number of activities needed. There's no magic number, but you don't want to have like 4. But I would rather have you have 9 activities that are fantastic and you were passionate about, and again, longitudinal, you were doing it for a while, as opposed to 15 where you mentioned something you did for a couple hours for one of them. But also activities like hobbies. If you're, passionate about tennis and you've been playing tennis your whole life, I would not put each hobby as a different activity, but you could lump them together, and that counts as one.
You were talking about like AMCAS, that's what where would that be?
So the question is, if you have a bad semester, year, where do you explain that in your application? Good question. Your personal statement, I believe, should be mainly positive. But if, for instance, you had a death of a parent, then that's a couple different things right there. That's explaining, motivations for medicine and also why you maybe did not have a good year. So that I would put in the personal statement. Otherwise, it depends on what happened. If you were having trouble adjusting to college, let's say, and it took you a year to really settle in, then that's something I might address elsewhere, whether it be in a secondary or another aspect of your application, because you can allude to it in the personal statement, but I wouldn't want that to be the overall theme of your personal statement, because for that, you're really trying to sell yourself to the medical schools. So, yeah.
I'm gonna say last question.
Last question? Okay.
If you know what field you want to go into, specifically, how do you address that either in your personal statement or just in your application in general?
I would be careful with that, just because you can mention it in the personal statement, but you're going to then see so many more specialties and everyone changes their mind. So I think it might, like an AdCom reading that might just be like, well, let's see what happens. Where you can say, oh, I'm very interested in pediatrics because I've had all these experiences, my own personal experience, but just be open to other fields because you don't want to be too rigid with that. Yeah. Okay. All right.